interesting takes on different things, and the actor's always involved. I feel like he's involved in some in his creations, but maybe he's not. But I really like him as an actor. He always plays a really kind of a creepier guy that you end up kind of feeling sorry and liking. Like, I'm like, dude, I kind of like this guy now. He seemed weird at first, but now I like him.
Right.
Yeah,
that was kind of
really like District 9, my number 9.
That was kind of the same thing. Yeah, with Hardcore Henry, it's like, well, this guy's a little bit bizarre, but okay. And then you just honestly start falling in love with him by the end of the movie. It's just like, okay, I like this guy. Please don't die. Please don't die. Don't let this guy go.
Yeah.
He was really good.
That's how you are in this movie.
Oh man, we're probably gonna have to do a Hardcore Henry review one of these days. But anyway, my number 9 is very much underappreciated, and honestly, they're now doing a remake of it next year, which I'm very interested in seeing. I went with Jumanji, which is one of, I think, Robin Williams' best movies. If you want to see him as a bit of a serious actor, and you see him have not just, emotion, but you see him a different side of him, where he's not always the fun and bubbly character like he would be in, like, say, Aladdin or RV or Man of the Year. This is where he's just more serious, like his roles with Mrs. Doubtfire, where he shows that serious side and he shows that he could be a parent. This is kind of like the same deal, where basically this kid gets trapped in a board game and he gets teleported about, I think it was maybe 10, 20 years later into the future, and then somehow he's able to come back, and now they have to basically finish the game in order for everything to just go back to normal. But it's still, geez Louise, this is a really good movie, and the animations for a lot of the animals are so, back then looked so realistic, it was so crazy. They had rhinos, they had elephants, they had random animals, and even, I'm going to say this, and honestly, I'm going to be one of those people that's be like, oh, wow. I thought that the monkeys in that movie were complete dicks half the time. I don't know if you noticed that, but those monkeys were just mean to the core. Jeez Louise.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited for the remake, too. I liked Jumanji, but again, like I was saying to you before, like, as a child, I didn't really enjoy the real-life movies as much, so because they were animals, I wanted to see it, but I didn't replay it probably because I'm like, boo, human, boo.
Well, Jumanji, I think it will be very interesting to see, again, the duo of Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart in it. I'm hoping that they don't add too much comedy into it. I think this could be one of those movies where it could be really good, and I'm hoping that it gets to like a serious side to it, but I guess we'll just kind of have to wait and see how that goes. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes, but yeah, Jumanji is definitely one of those movies that is really good and definitely deserves a little more credit than what it was given, and it definitely appreciates you more. It appreciates Robin Williams so much more as an actor. God rest the man's soul, I miss him. But going from that somber note to my number 8, definitely one that there's some people that might disagree, saying that they could do so much better with this movie, but in all honesty, I still appreciate it as a whole because it was bound to happen sooner or later, and that being Freddy versus Jason, the two iconic horror movie villains that everybody loves and hates and just really wants to get behind. Finally, we get to see them go at each other in just a major Royal Rumble basic deal. Jeez Louise. I mean, in all honesty, this is a really good movie. It, again, shows how clever of a villain Robert Englund can be. And plus, you get to see more of Jason being, of course, Jason. And even at the end, they show a little bit of a precursor of a possibility of a Freddy vs. Jason 2. But the thing is, I think it's going to be hard to do without Robert Englund. And I know that he's now retiring the Freddy character, but I'm sure he'll probably still do a couple movies every now and then. I will say this, I think that Robert Englund's, acting skills are just amazing. I think that, him and Freddy and Nightmare on Elm Street, Lake Placid, Phantom of the Opera, just great villain. We had to know that Freddy vs. Jason was going to happen sooner rather than later, and finally, after so long, I think this was after the whole Jason Goes to Hell deal. They had this little precursor where they show like Jason's mask on the ground, and then up from the depths of the ground, there's the famous claw of Freddy where he just grabs it and pulls it down to the grave with him, and it's like, okay, this movie might have sucked, but now it just got more interesting with that ending. Jeez Louise.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't say much about that movie because I remember I just like overviewed it. But
I thought it was because going back to your basic fear of not enjoying horror movies as much because some of them are scary.
yeah, so I don't think I'm that afraid of Freddy Krueger or Jason, just because they're not the scary type anymore. They're more like the slasher films for me, and that's a whole other category of different horror movies. I'm more afraid of like the demon possession ones.
Oh,
the slasher films are still, like Scream and everything. They're more jumpy for me than scary. But you're right. I don't necessarily enjoy horror. But I try. I like to try new things, so I will watch.
I honestly want to see one of these conventions that you pop into where there's this guy dressed up like Freddy Krueger, and he has not only the full attire, but he has the whole face deal where it basically looks like. Actually, what's funny is that the guy who created Freddy's face basically just took like this pepperoni pizza and he just started molding it from that. Just seeing how well that they made his face and just how they made it look so. Honestly, like I said, I've said this on many occasions. The Freddy Krueger that came before the remake they did a few years ago looks so much better, and it honestly looks like his face is actually disfigured. It doesn't look like a basic charcoal face deal, but that's another story. So, what's your we're at number 8, yeah. So, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is definitely different from most of the movies that are, I think, been said so far. It's a drama with Denzel Washington called John Q. Have you ever heard of John Q?
The name sounds very, very familiar, in all honesty. I can't remember where I've heard of it and when I've heard of it, but it sounds very familiar.
Well, it's as a kid, I watched this movie and I loved it, and which is really weird because, I guess it's only rated PG-13, but it says the F word in it. It's kind of a violent movie. It's about basically a family who are a little bit on like the poor side. Like Denzel Washington's the dad, and then he has a wife, and he has a son. And basically, his son has a heart condition that was never ever reported to him in all of his doctor's visits because his HMO doesn't cover this heart condition. So I think he's probably around 9 years old. It starts off all the happiness, like the family's so in love with one another, and they're so happy. And they're at a baseball game, and their son hits a great, a long, almost home run ball. He's sprinting, he's getting around first base, and right when he rounds first base, he falls flat on the, face first flat, and everyone's like, whoa, what happened to him? His heart stopped. He basically died right there, but, they took him to the hospital, and then doctors were like, oh, by the way, your son has had a huge heart, he shouldn't be doing anything, and actually he's going to die. And, they're like, what? And, John, which is the dad, Denzel Washington, basically is like, well, let's get him on the list. Let's get him a transplant. That's what we do, right? That's what happens. And they're like, well, the thing is, you can't afford it, so you're going to be at the bottom, and by the time he actually gets a heart, he's going to die. So, sorry, your son's going to die. He's dying.
Wow.
And basically, it says a good man. On the bottom it says, give a father no options and you leave him no choice. So he takes the hospital under siege, basically. He gets a gun, he goes serious, and he basically asks everybody, let's say the word basically one more time, just stop me. but he gets a gun and he holds up the hospital and he wants a heart for his son. Wow. And he goes vigilante justice on trying to get his son and save his son's life. It's really good. It's an awesome movie. I'm not telling you the end. It's sad. You should watch it.
I'm not telling you the end, but it's sad.
What?
You said, I'm not telling you the ending, but it's sad. I'm like, I think you just gave it away right there.
Oh, I did not. Don't worry. I did not. You don't even know. But Denzel Washington is an amazing actor, so if that doesn't make you want to see it, then I don't know what else will.
All right, so what's your number 7?
My number 7 is it's more of an adventure movie. It is Hidalgo. Have you ever heard of Hidalgo?
I have never even heard of Hidalgo.
Well, good. Well, it's starring, oh gosh, I'm going to say his name wrong, but he's also in Lord of the Rings. Viggo Mortensen?
I wouldn't even have a guess. I wouldn't even have a guess of the name.
Do you know him? From Lord of the Rings, he's like one of the main characters.
I think if I pull up his face, I might remember him, but...
Yeah, but he's an amazing actor, too, and Hidalgo is basically a true story. I said the word basically again. I am sorry, everyone. That's annoying. Hidalgo is a true story about a rider, a horse rider, of course, and his name is Frank T. Hopkins, an American, Frank T. Hopkins, and his horse, Hidalgo, and they're a long-distance horse racer. So he travels like 3,000 miles in these races, and he keeps winning that, and he wins and wins and wins. He's the best in the world. And it's like, oh, he's great, but he has his own issues, and he's a drunk, and people don't really rely on him anymore, and he's in, what are they called? Those old westerns, like, it's set back in the 1800s, I'm pretty sure, or the 1900s.
Okay. And
it's those old western shows, so he's in one of those, and he's called, like, the greatest racer of all time. So a sheik from Arabia, is it Arabia? It's either Arabia or he's basically needing to travel to Arabia to go in this 3,000-mile Arabian desert race because they want him to take his title. They're like, hey, you're not the best racer. You've never raced on our turf. And he has a little Mustang named Hidalgo, and they have these huge, giant Arabian, thoroughbred horses that are meant for the desert. And all in all, he has to race for his life in this crazy desert killing spree. It's amazing. It's just a fun. I love horses too, so when I saw it's another horse racing movie, I'm like, oh, this is cool, but it's just so much goes into it, and the different cultures, seeing the Arabian culture versus how the Americans are, and how he takes to the culture is really cool, and just learning new things. And again, it's a true story, so I really like that too. So if you haven't heard of Hidalgo and you are interested in true stories that are amazing, and it's about an American hero that travels to Arabia to race 3,000 miles on a horse. Pretty crazy, and it was fun.
Sounds like a good movie. I mean, I've never heard of it, but I mean, by the story that you described, it actually sounds like a pretty good movie.
It's really interesting too. Just learning. I learned so much from it. I was like, whoa, this is how they can do this. Wow.
All right, so my number 7, I think, could be described up like this: you got to go and dig those holes. And yes, it is Disney's Holes, which stars Shia LaBeouf, I think it was Jon Voight, Sigourney Weaver, a lot of great actors again in this movie. This was honestly one of my favorites growing up. You basically have this kid who has nothing but a rung of bad luck, and he ends up going into this correctional camp where they're